sort of what are the, maybe let's scare us, right? What do we stand to lose if in 15 years we reconvene and we haven't made progress on regional cooperation in South Asia? And where are the green shoots? Where are the opportunities that we need to be doubling down on?
What do we have to lose? Everything. That may be the impetus to do something, do the things we haven't done. I think you're exactly right. Climate is an existential issue. It is truly an existential issue. That is why it is a security issue. It is the ultimate security issue. And I don't say that simply as bombast. It literally is about whether you exist or not, right? I often give this example. If a village in northern Pakistan, an enemy comes and suddenly it disappears, everyone in the village and the village itself, would that be a security issue or not? Happened in 2010. The place is called Atabad. There is now a beautiful lake. We love taking tourists there to take photographs and put them on Instagram. Right? Happened because of a glove. Right? I can tell you similar examples in India. I can tell you similar examples in Bangladesh. I can tell you similar examples everywhere. So that's the stakes. There's a reason it's called global climate change. Right? There can be, you're exactly right, there can be a regional approach to doing things, but the molecule from Uzair today will end up causing a flood somewhere else. Right? That's the nature of global climate change. That's why it's called global. It's not just an adjective to add to that. And the other one is I'll come to in a minute. In our title, it says what can regional cooperation on combating climate change. There's very little that region, if you mean South Asia, can do to combat climate change. Right? Simply because of the number was mentioned in a different sort of context. If you take Pakistan, Pakistan has 0.06% of global emissions. So you can put solar panels all across Pakistan and make those zero, and you've made no dent on global climate change. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just trying to put this in perspective that there is a need for the globalness in the solution that simply cannot come from adding, right? This jigsaw puzzle approach we've taken to climate change is just scientifically wrong, right? To compare to the 0.06, US is 2.16. So, okay, Pakistan, US could trade, and Pakistan all 0.06 goes. Now the US is 12.1, right? And that's my third quibble. I was really taken by Hans's comments. I don't know if he's in the room or not, but thank you, Hans. Thank you very much. I loved his list of 10 things Pakistan can do on agriculture, and started making a list of 10 things the US could do on climate. But as a Pakistani, I know people don't like being lectured on what they should be doing. So let me not do that. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you're going to do anything about climate, it's going to happen here in DC. And it hasn't been happening. Right? Now, again, this is not about finger pointing. You're going to talk all about this all of next week when we are sort of jumping up and down in Sharm el-Sheikh at the next COP. Because that's the nature of the thing. And what it leads to is this idea of relationship, which if we are going to do anything about climate change anywhere in the world, then our existing models of how we understand, conceive, and think about relationships has to change. That's the point about global. That what global climate change threatens is our existing models of how international affairs happen. Right? International relations is inter-nation. Climate change, much like COVID, somewhat like COVID, but like many other things, simply cannot be tackled within an international framework that does not take global as its center point. That's the challenge, right? That's the challenge of climate change. I am unfortunately pessimistic on this. But you cannot, no amount of trying to force this into that is going to do the thing. On the positive side, you're asking me to look at green shoots. I don't know if they're green shoots, but I think there is something that has happened. People are in other parts of the world, unfortunately not, I live in the US, so unfortunately not here. Right? We are the last standing country in the world, here meaning US, which still have climate deniers. That's a species that just doesn't exist anywhere else, right? Even Bolsonaro in Brazil did not deny climate. So that's our challenge. But one of the things that's happened, I think, with recent events is that climate has become personal for many people. And in some ways, maybe that's the green shoot. And so, and I've been talking and writing about this idea for at least 10 years that we are now in what I call the age of adaptation. This is the combat problem, right? So when I say Pakistan can't do anything about, and shouldn't, Pakistan should certainly bring its emissions down. I don't think coal is a good idea, but that's a business problem. Pakistan should certainly be doing all of that because we will grow for all those reasons. But the combating part is not for Pakistan to do. For what is for Pakistan to do, and Bangladesh to do, and Sri Lanka to do, and Nepal to do, and maybe even India to do, that they're a bigger place and emissions are different, is to prepare for what I'm calling the age of adaptation. Right? So mitigation and adaptation, two key concepts. Mitigation is what do you do to keep a problem from happening, which is essentially carbon control, which is essentially energy policy. Right? That's why every time you talk about climate, you're essentially talking energy in one way or the other because that's where the emissions are coming. Now, as soon as you're talking adaptation, you are saying some impacts are inevitable. We as a species are very good at adaptation. That's why we won out over our other cousins, right? We adapt. It is cold, I wear a sweater. It is raining, I take an umbrella. But adaptation always has a cost, right? That's what's happening with the flood. But what I mean by preparing for the age of adaptation is, as soon as you acknowledge that we are in the age of adaptation, your policy and action options totally change. They are no longer essentially carbon management. They are mostly about water. So think about what happens when climate changes. Water rises, sea level rise. Water melts, glaciers. Water disappears, drought. Water falls from the sky like no one's business. Extreme events and floods, right? So the future, not even the future, the present of climate policy has to be rewritten in the language of water rather than only in the language of carbon. Don't smile, because the next point I was going to make is water, unfortunately, is too important to leave only to our water colleagues. I would say the same about climate. Water is too important to leave only to water people. Development policy has to become water policy. And I'll end with this, with the council, we did this work, Karim was also part of that, on water challenges for Pakistan. And that has extended in the last many months on stuff that I've been doing, including with the government. We've prepared this thing called Living Indus. It's an investment plan, comes to, I think, something like 30 billion or whatever, but it's not sort of, it's a set of ideas that if you really took the Indus, rather than carbon, as the footprint of climate action, what are the type of things you would do for climate? And none of them are about carbon. They are about mangroves, they are about heritage, they are about clean cities, they are about groundwater, they are about green zones, they are about Indus parks. And why the Indus? Pakistan is the Indus, right? It's not the only country where the Indus flows, but 90% of Pakistanis live in the Indus Basin. So this is not Indus as water, this is Indus as basin. 90% of Pakistanis live on the Indus Basin. 85% of Pakistan economy comes from the Indus Basin. 9 out of the 9 largest cities in Pakistan are within 30 kilometers of the Indus. The 10th is Quetta, right? Even our love stories depend on the Indus. For those who know that lady with the ghada who couldn't cross, that was Indus rising. Right? Noorjahan can't sing her songs without the Indus. Sanunera lipulte bulake, I'm sorry. But the point is that we need to reframe climate as a real issue of real people, because none of us has seen carbon, CO2. We can't taste it. I don't know what it smells like. All I know is numbers. But you turn it into water, you turn it into the Indus Basin. Now you may have an opportunity to do some change. I think that's where the cooperation is. Heat is very real if you're in South Asia. Right? It's no longer the abstract 1.5. There is no scientific path I know of I will give anything in my life if 1.5 could be beat. It couldn't. Anyone who tries to even think about it is lying. They know it. They knew it at Paris. They know it now. So I'm totally with you. But heat is real. For the last 8 years running, more than 100 people die in a heat wave in Karachi. The first year when 650 died, it made a little news because it was in Ramzan and you could package it in religion and blah, blah. For the last 6 years, that heat wave, and this is clearly climate, and people are dying. In the first 3 years, you had to dig, ED had to dig mass graves in Karachi, right? And this heat wave was not just Karachi. It started in Karachi, went through New Delhi, nearly to the border of Bangladesh. Right? Heat has become a season in Karachi, just like smog has become a season in Lahore. Right? There is now a disaster season in Pakistan. Early warning is passé. We know there will be floods in 8 months. We know there will be smog in 2 months. We know there will be a heat wave in Karachi in 6 months. I can give you the calendar. Right? But that needs a different way. I'm with you on adaptation financing. In Paris, supposedly there's this phantom 100 billion. I don't want any money from the US for Pakistan, but please pay your dues to the world, right? That 100 billion seemed like a big amount then. It seems like a pitiful amount now because the supposed cost of the floods is 42 billion according to the World Bank, right? Now, who's going to pay the 42 billion? It'll come, I can promise you. Actually, people are very resilient. Resilience is not a good thing. Resilience is a bad thing. Resilience means I get hit and somehow I deal with it. Right? So where is the 42 billion going to come? It's going to come from poor people. My house is gone. I'm going to take the money I was saving for my daughter's wedding and now rebuild it. I'm going to sell that cow that I had put on my roof. That is how we always do it. We've been living on a floodplain for 5,000 years. We know how this is done. So what is happening in global climate change, this is why it's global, is that the rich, and this is not about Pakistan, US, this is about me and you, are passing on the cost of our excess to the poorest in the world. Climate justice is as much an internal Pakistan issue and an internal India issue and an internal Bangladesh issue as it is an internal US issue. As you have more and more of these, as we've seen in this flood, the world will feel bad, but we've seen much less flows in this flood than in the previous ones because now the climate episodes are more. Right? At the time there was a flood in Pakistan, there was another one in the Philippines, there was a hurricane developing in Florida, there had been fires in California. Right? So the world's ability at the time when you need the most cooperation, your ability to cooperate lingers. One last thought on Mia. I'm also a fan of Mia, but think about what happened to her. The IMF and the World Bank kicked her just like they are kicking Pakistan. I think I've proved my climate credentials. I do not like international institutions coming and telling countries to put up environmental and climate conditionalities. Right? They asked her, just as now they are asking Pakistan and other countries, well, you must do something about climate because people in our countries are really worried about it. And therefore, you force a country already not able to pay up to take decisions that are not necessary. We lie. It has become fashionable. I am fashionable to just say climate is real. If we actually thought this was a real crisis, we would act as if it was a real crisis. When COVID happened, $6.25 trillion appeared out of the blue. Streets emptied. Airplanes stopped. Schools shut. All of those were impossible if we believe it is real. This goes to the question that I think a number of you asked, what can be done? I wish I knew that. I'm smart, but really not that smart. But I think there are some things to be done. And I think part of it is not what is to be done, but who is to do what. So if I'm in Boston or I'm in DC, I really need to bring that 12.1% down. That's where the mitigation focus should be. In fact, what's happened is the opposite. We are pushing developing countries to mitigate. And we are saying we are just going after this myth of net zero. Net zero is not zero, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. So that needs to change. If I'm in Boston, if I'm in Washington, I really need to make those lifestyle changes that we were sort of play acting a bit about, right? Without that, there is no path out of climate change. without major lifestyle change in major emitters. By major emitters, I don't just mean countries, it means the rich in Pakistan also, right? It's not a rich country, poor country thing, it is a consumptive, non-consumptive thing. We are smart, I'll come to that. If you are in Pakistan, years ago I wrote this paper, I really liked the title I came up with, which was Bend It Like Beijing. It was a play on the movie. We really need to do what Beijing did with their emissions, if you are in Pakistan, which means we have to prepare for growth, and the ratio for growth versus energy, which has historically been kind of the straight line, we need to bend that curve. The only country that has done that is China, which is where the mitigation play in Pakistan is. And part of it is automobile, but automobile right now, I think if you want to do something, do it in the fuel refinery, because that's where the smog is coming from. And so there are real things we can do. Do it in the new plants, do it in buildings. I think one of the major sectors in Pakistan is you build this huge house and then you have a paper-thin window. You're heating and cooling it and then throwing money out of. So there are lots of things like that to be done that won't stop climate change, but will prepare us better. And most importantly, I think what we are all agreed on is adaptation. By adaptation, prepare ourselves for the changes that are coming. Many of them actually have benefits. If you grow more trees in Karachi, if you give better hydration in Karachi, even if there is no climate change, you're still better off, right? Show me an adaptation project, I will show you a development project. If you want to really find out what adaptation looks like, follow Abid Suleiri's Twitter feed, because that's what they do. So a lot of what we are talking about here can be done. It won't stop, sir. It won't stop climate change. I think it's too late for that. But I think, and this goes to your question also, I think we can at least learn from, including from COVID. I do it with my students, that what if I could have come to the president of the US and said, give me $100 billion, and I will stop this thing called COVID that's about to come. Now, first of all, at that point, the president was Donald Trump, so I don't think the bet would have been taken, but I don't think it would have been taken by anyone, right? The problem with climate is the IPCC and others have been telling this to you. And the real problem with climate is there is no vaccine, right? So climate is different from COVID. We've just gone through a rehearsal of what global crises look like. The first thing that died was multilateralism, right? And that is where I'll end with your, I'm not sure, your metaphors are nice, but I'll give you mine. I think it's a race. I think it's a race between human knowledge and human wisdom. I have no doubt that we have the knowledge to do better. I'm not sure if we have the wisdom.